Hello, good morning. Welcome to Vocal Intuition Live with me, Anne Leatherland. And I'm a coach, but also a vocal coach. So I tend to coin myself as coach and vocal expert. But whatever, I'm here to help people to gain the confidence and skill to speak out in the way that they want to. So my question this morning is, have you ever had a challenge where it just feels like you're looking up at the top of a huge mountain that you can't possibly scale? I know I have. And whenever we're faced with certainly difficult challenges in life, it can feel like we're staring up at that huge mountain. If you're just joining me, then do feel that you can put questions and comments in. I'll either get to them while I'm speaking here or I'll come back to you later. And the same if you're watching the recording, because I'd love to know what you think. Now, this thing of looking at the huge mountain or maybe having to take a giant leap is especially so for most people when they're faced with public speaking. When they have to appear in front of others, whether it's a meeting or a presentation, or actually sometimes even on the telephone, depending on who it is that we're speaking to. And it's even worse, isn't it, when the stakes are high? I remember once having to give a presentation for the British Voice Association, and it was part of a competition actually for the Van Lawrence Award. And I'd prepared for ages and I'd got this presentation ready. It was about 14 or 15 years ago now. And it just struck fear into me simply because I knew that a lot of the people I'd referenced in the paper that I was going to talk about were actually going to be there in the audience, watching, listening, and then they would ask me questions afterwards. And a very good friend of mine, Dr. Gillian Kayes, said to me, just go in before the thing starts and touch each wall and say, this space is mine. And it made a huge difference. But what also made a huge difference was realizing that I didn't have to worry because I'd prepared, I'd done things step by step. It's not as if I was trying to leap from a very low point to a very high point. I had what I needed to cope with what was going to come up. And after a week of fretting, I realized this and it went very well. I didn't win, but I was in the final three, so that was okay. But how do we climb those mountains? And what are they made of? Do we make the mountains ourselves? Well, they could be made of our nervousness, our lack of confidence, being unsure about things, not being happy with our voice, maybe, or fearing criticism. And then there's a wanting to be heard or taken seriously. And at the top is this successful delivery of our message and the fact that people will be engaged and maybe like us and maybe ask us to come and do something again. So, what is it then that causes these problems, that causes us to build these mountains that then we feel we can't climb? Just before I go on, I'm just going to check and see if anyone's in the comments. I can't see anything yet. But if you're there, if you're watching, do pop in and say hello. Maybe it's having previous bad experience that causes us to build these mountains and stop us even approaching them then once we've done it. People do criticize us from time to time. Perhaps they don't mean it to come across as it does, or perhaps they do. But there's a lot about that actually, how we handle criticism and how we decide whether it's worthwhile uh, criticism or constructive, or whether we should take any notice. I think I've mentioned it in one of my podcasts on the Be Truly Heard podcast, if you want to go and have a look at that. We also fear that we'll fall down. So if we start climbing this mountain that we've made, of getting out there, of speaking, of overcoming some of the fears that we have, and dealing with that criticism and engaging people that at some point we might fall. So there might be, for instance, a lack of engagement. Those people might not like us. They might think we're boring, or we might forget things. And all this stems from a sort of primeval pattern, really, where human beings learned to live in groups. And if you were in the group, you were safe, you were accepted. And if you were outside the group, you weren't. So there's always a fear, I think, that comes up from the deepest, oldest part of ourselves, that what if we're not accepted when we speak? Now, we don't think of it like that, but that's how it comes up, I think. And then our body warns us that there's something wrong, and hence the nerves appear again. Now, I'm sure there are lots of other things that we can throw into our mountains that we build for ourselves, or the ones that are seemingly there that we can't climb. And do tell me in the comments if you've got particular ones that you want to put in there. I'm really thinking about in terms of speaking this morning, but if you want to put any in there that are relevant to life in general, that's fine too. But you know what the biggest problem is? It's the expectation that we can go from there to there. So, in other words, we can take a huge leap and somehow go from there to there. And the mountain seems like that, doesn't it? You know, I had a client once and we were doing a course. It was a mini course of some sort. And after about day 3, when we were still practicing some of the same exercises but taking things forward with it, she said, "When are we going to move on to do harder things?" And I said, "Well, when we've mastered the fundamentals, when we've mastered the thing that's going to make it possible for us to, if you like, climb the rest of the mountain." And voice work's a bit like that, and confidence work is as well. We can't just leap from there to there. Now, I know there are people all over the internet saying they can get you brilliant results in 2 minutes. I'm sorry, as far as I'm concerned, that's a bit showy. I don't think it works. I think where we're learning, we're changing ourselves, we're changing our beliefs, and we're changing, if you like, our muscular processes, because that's what speaking is. It's a muscular process made of lots of different elements from our body and coordinations. Then we're not going to do that in 2 minutes. We might get a quick result. I can do it myself. I can help people to get a quick result if it's in a masterclass or something. But can they go away and repeat that and know how to use it in all situations? Well, that's unlikely unless they practice it and find out more and actually take it step by step and understand what to do with it. So the solution is, don't expect to leap straight from the bottom to the top of your mountain. Break it down into smaller steps. So, have you ever seen a mountain climber or heard of a mountain climber who just scaled vertically? I bet there is one somewhere who's done it, but it's not easy, and it's certainly not for everybody. They tend to go up in a zigzag route, little steps at a time. And the reason for this is something called gradient. A slope has a gradient. If you're a driver, you'll know those signs that say the gradient is 10%, 20%, or whatever, or 1 in 5. And it's an indication of how steep the road ahead is. And the steeper the road, the more little steps you need to take. So how can we take little steps then towards getting the skill and confidence to speak out, especially in pressurized situations? Well, for me, the first one is accepting that past experiences are in the past. Somebody might have said something, you may not have done it as well as you wanted to. You may have felt overly nervous, but that doesn't mean it will always be that way. And that acceptance that that's in the past helps us to say, well, okay, I'm building from now. And from now, I'm going to plan out my new steps and gain more knowledge and gain more skill so that I can scale that mountain or even make the mountain shallower, make that gradient shallower. Then you can take your planned steps so that you're no longer in fear of falling, or you know what to do if you do fall. So again, people climbing mountains have safety harnesses. You can have safety strategies and knowledge that will help you if you feel that you're going to fall. And there are lots of things that can get in the way when we're speaking in public. It can be, for instance, just that we have a look at somebody's face and they look a bit bored. So we can either go into a tailspin of, oh, my talk isn't very interesting, they're not listening, or you can think, maybe that person's just processing. You can reframe it. Now, if the whole audience looks unengaged, then perhaps you can just change the route a little bit. You can change the step, and that's about gaining the flexibility. And it's a skill, actually, to just change direction a little bit so that you're safe and so that you're back on track for reaching the summit. For instance, I'll just go back to my mountain analogy. If there's a sudden fall of snow or something's in the way, then the steps have to be changed. The direction has to be changed a little bit so that everybody's okay. And you can do that for yourself as well, in terms of speaking and in terms of tackling it. And then this is really important to me, is getting the fundamental skills and beliefs working for you. So the fundamental physical skills and the belief in yourself that you can use them and you can do what you need to do. Still not seeing any comments. Maybe it's just this bit of software, but if you are there, just say what you're thinking, pop something in the comments, and I'll get back to you later. Excuse me, just have a little drink of water there. So we've had a look at how we sometimes create those mountains or feel that those mountains are there, and also what the solution is. The solution is to make the gradient easier, to break it down into little steps. And moving from stage to stage, you'll eventually get to the summit. Is it always slow? I can hear you asking. Well, no, it's not necessarily. Because sometimes, if the steps are the correct ones, you can move through some of them quite quickly. I said earlier that we do need to get the fundamentals down, and that can be the slowest stage very often. So I'm going to call that the base camp. Everything's ready, you get everything set up, and then you can build on that and take those stages up the mountain. And I use this approach with my clients. It works very well. Every step forward counts, though. Progress comes from moving and moving with intention and energy and taking one step after another. What about steps back? Well, sometimes there are steps back. Sometimes we go, oh, I didn't quite understand that, or I don't think I quite went the right way with that presentation, or I don't think I put that very well in that meeting. That shouldn't put us off forever. We can analyze that, figure out what to do next time, and move from now. So, building skills and self belief as we go and then putting them together is the answer to climbing that mountain. If you're interested in more ideas about gaining confidence for speaking, and especially if you're a woman in business facing all the challenges that that presents, then why don't you have a listen to my podcast, Be Truly Heard? It's out there on Apple and on all the usual channels. If you're interested in finding out anything else about my work or perhaps having a chat, then again, get in touch. I'll put the link in the comments. That's all for this week anyway, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.